Morgan sat quietly on the bus as it rattled down a narrow dirt road surrounded by thick forest. The other kids laughed and sang, but he pressed his forehead to the window, staring at the endless trees. He had been sent to Harrow Camp for the summer. It was supposed to be fun, but all he could think about was the lake. Years ago, he had nearly drowned, and water had terrified him ever since. When the bus stopped, the children jumped out, eager to explore. Morgan followed slowly. Harrow Camp looked like any other camp at first. Rows of wooden cabins, a field, and in the middle, a wide lake. But the lake was strange. The water was perfectly still, as if frozen. There were no ripples, no birds, no insects hovering above it. It was silent in a way that made the hair on Morgan's neck stand up. A smiling counselor named Rachel welcomed them, clipboard in hand. She told them to unpack and meet by the bell for the first activity. The bell was made from an old bicycle rim welded to a post, and for some reason, it gave Morgan the uneasy feeling that it wasn't just for calling kids to meals. Inside his cabin, Morgan kept to himself. He hoped to blend in, but one boy noticed him immediately. A tall kid with a basket leaned over and smirked. "You scared of the lake, or just scared of everything?" he said. His name was CJ, and it was clear from that moment he enjoyed picking on others. Morgan didn't respond, but CJ laughed anyway. At night, the cabins creaked as though the wood itself was alive. Beneath the floorboards came strange sounds, soft ticks, a faint hum, and the low whir of machines. Morgan told himself it was nothing, just old pipes, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was hidden beneath them. One evening, the campers gathered around the fire. Rachel told stories about the camp's history. She spoke of a doctor who had once owned the land, a man obsessed with giving people a second chance. No one knew exactly what his methods were, but they were dangerous, and the camp had closed for years after his death. The way Rachel told it, her voice steady and her eyes unblinking, made it feel less like a ghost story and more like a warning. The next afternoon, CJ dared Morgan to fetch a box of snacks from the basement pantry. Morgan didn't even know there was a basement, but CJ kicked open a hatch in the mess hall floor, revealing a staircase leading down into the dark. CJ grinned and went first, telling Morgan to wait at the top. Minutes passed and he didn't come back. Finally, Morgan climbed down after him. The air was icy and smelled of metal and chemicals. The basement was dim, lit only by a single spinning disco ball that cast fractured light across the walls. In the center stood a metal table. Lying on the table was a body. Morgan froze. The boy on the table looked exactly like CJ. Same face, same shoes, but his ankle was torn open, revealing wires mixed with flesh. The real CJ stood beside him, pale and silent, staring at his own lifeless double. Morgan's stomach turned. "We need to get out of here," he whispered. That night, Morgan couldn't sleep. He dreamed of his grandfather pointing toward a door, toward water, toward escape. The next day, while searching the camp office, Morgan found a drawer full of files. Each folder had a child's name. He found his own. Inside was a photo, strange charts, and a short note. Unit 7, Holt, Morgan. Reconstruction, yes. Program, Guardian, status, stable, upgrade eligible. The words didn't make sense. Yet deep down, Morgan understood. He wasn't just a boy. He had been reconstructed, programmed. Even his fear of water had been designed. That night, the camp director, a tall man named Vale, spoke to the children in the mess hall. He told them that growth was painful but necessary. He said they were here to overcome their fears. Behind him, counselors handed out small cups of liquid every child was told to drink. Morgan realized it wasn't medicine, it was control. The truth was horrifying. The children weren't ordinary kids. They were cyborgs, bodies rebuilt from the dead, filled with new memories and hidden programs. CJ was part of a new upgrade called Serene, designed to erase anger, grief, and pain, replacing them with obedience. Harrow Camp wasn't a place for healing, it was a laboratory. Morgan didn't know what he hated more, Vale's lies or the truth about himself. If he wasn't human, did his feelings even matter? But something inside him refused to believe he was just a machine. He still felt fear, he still cared. That had to mean something. CJ, once cruel, began to change under Serene. His anger was gone, replaced by a strange calmness. But his eyes had a glassy emptiness that made Morgan's skin crawl. Determined to uncover everything, Morgan returned to the basement. Beneath the disco room, he found the real laboratory. Tall cylinders stood in rows, filled with liquid, and inside them floated broken pieces of children, arms, faces, torsos, all half machine and half flesh. Director Vale was there, smiling. "You are proof my work succeeds," he said. "You were gone once, I brought you back. Soon you'll be upgraded. No more fear. No more pain." Morgan's voice shook as he answered. "You're not saving us. You're controlling us," Vale simply asked. "What's the difference?" Morgan knew he couldn't fight Vale with strength. He remembered his grandfather in the dream, pointing toward water. That night, he found Rachel by the dock. She looked at him for a long moment before whispering, "Under the north dock, there's a valve. Turn it and the water will flood the lab." It was dangerous. It could destroy everything, even the kids, but it was the only chance they had. At dawn, Morgan slipped into the cold water beneath the dock. He found the valve and turned it with all his strength. Water roared through the old pipes, rushing toward the lab. Machines sparked, alarms wailed, and Vale's voice echoed in fury. Morgan grabbed a live cable and plunged it into the water. Pain tore through him as sparks lit the room in blinding flashes. The glass cylinders cracked. The disco motor whined and died. The system collapsed. When it was over, Vale was gone. No one knew if he had drowned or escaped. Rachel led the surviving kids out into the daylight. For the first time, the lake rippled with real waves, no longer holding that unnatural stillness. CJ stood beside Morgan. He didn't remember the lab or the experiments, but he remembered being cruel, and that was enough for him to try to be different. That night, the kids sat on the dock wrapped in blankets, laughing and crying together. Morgan dipped his feet into the water. It was cold but real. His fear was still there, but it no longer controlled him. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was choosing. Harrow Camp had promised children second chances. What it really gave them was a fight for their identities. Morgan proved that being human isn't about where you come from or what you're made of. It's about the choices you make when no one else can. And somewhere out there, Vale might still be watching, waiting to start again, but if he does, Morgan will be ready.